Pillars of Progress, a look at the work our government is doing as it implements the development plans for the nation. I'm Anne-Marie Ganes. Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar and a delegation that included the Ministers of Industry and Trade and Foreign Affairs, as well as public and private sector representatives, returned from a trade mission to Brazil that saw this country's participation in the 6th World Economic Forum. The Prime Minister held a media conference and reported that the trip was extremely successful.
Mrs. Persad-Bissessar says the trade mission was a very timely one, as it would assist this country in securing its place in a competitive global environment. She says Brazil has a lot of resources that it cannot develop on its own, and this provides opportunities for countries like Trinidad and Tobago that have expertise to offer.
We do not live as independent nations totally. You know the expression, no man is an island. And in the same way, no nation can stand alone now in the global village. What we are seeing is the interdependence of world communities being a reality. And we live in this global village. To progress, we cannot just stay in our village and hope for something to happen. Wait for somebody to come to you at your door. It doesn't work that way anymore. And the world is very competitive. Each nation seeks to gain advantage in areas where they have what is called a competitive edge. And for Trinidad and Tobago, we have several areas in which we have competitive advantages. We are ideally located here. So geographically, we are ideally located for the West to go back into the old world. Our climate is one that is most comfortable for all. Our people are exceedingly educated and talented. Our human resource is tremendous. And whilst we are here, and sometimes we moan about the inefficiencies in the way we conduct and do business, when you go elsewhere, you will see that they are even more disadvantaged in terms of efficiencies and doing businesses. And so we have that advantage as well. As an English-speaking country, that is an advantage too. And as I come back to the human resources of this country, we have been in Brazil. They're growing, they're tremendously growing. It's just massive, masses, thousands and millions. I think there are almost nearly 200 million people in Brazil. Their land mass, multiply ours to the X factor. Their land mass is tremendous, the natural resource is tremendous. But they need partnering with others to develop those resources that they have. And we are ideally placed in every regard to offer that kind of partnership. And it is not that we are all altruistic, that we go there to say, well, we are great people and we want to help you. It doesn't work that way. It works as a win-win for both nations. It should be and must be a win-win for both nations. And so the expertise that we have in certain areas can be transferred to Brazil.
One area of expertise that this country has that Brazil needs is 100 years of knowledge and experience in extracting oil from the ground. The Prime Minister says one exciting development is the prospect of establishing air travel links between Trinidad and Tobago and Brazil. She says this will provide opportunities for tourism, particularly for the benefit of Tobago. Minister of Industry and Trade Stephen Cady says existing links with Brazil have been strengthened and the delegation scouted for new business opportunities.
The issue of energy. We went to, for instance, a dockyard in Rio, and it is just a massive place. How can Trinidad and Tobago compete with that? We can't compete directly with that. What we can, in fact, do, however, is we can supply components, for instance, from our local producers here in Labre to Brazil. And these are the areas that we are looking at of working with the various Brazilian companies, because the expansion in Brazil, especially in the oil fields, is phenomenal. Whether or not Brazil can actually achieve that in the time frame that they want to is left to be seen. And what we're seeing is that Trinidad and Tobago can help the Brazilians in achieving what they want to do.
Foreign Affairs Minister Dr. Surajratan Rambachan says the delegation visited a research center in Brazil that can assist Trinidad and Tobago's agriculture sector. And the South American nation can also assist this country in sourcing cheaper food at a time when other countries are scaling back their exports.
We spoke to Embrapa. Now, Embrapa is the premier agricultural research institute in Brazil, and they are all over the world. And Brazil uses Embrapa in order to help other countries develop their agriculture. I'll give you an example. For example, in this region of Brasilia, the capital, at one time it was said that they could not grow soybeans there. And Embrapa was able to create a variety of soybeans. And today, Brasilia is one of the highest yielding areas for soybean per hectare in Brazil. So it shows the capacity of that organization to contribute to agricultural development. Now, we in Trinidad and Tobago must increase our food production. I believe that food is going to be the next weapon that countries are going to use, if you may use a terminology. Already India and Pakistan and so on, they are saying that they are not going to be exporting certain commodities. So that we have to look for other sources of food. A couple of members of the delegation went specifically to look at Brazil in terms of the export of food, particularly meats, to Trinidad and Tobago. Now, you know that we have this problem from the 80s and 70s about foot and mouth disease. But the EU imports beef out of Brazil, and other countries are importing, which means that they have dealt with the problem. So we have to step up and deal with the problem also, and bring meat cheaper to our people. We import from Australia and New Zealand now, which is costing us a hell of a lot. So that is something also that part of the delegation went to Sao Paulo to deal with. But there are other kinds of food that we use here that can also be imported at cheaper prices from Brazil. So
another significant event in the Brazil mission was the unveiling of a plaque at a site donated to Trinidad and Tobago 38 years ago for the construction of an embassy building. The Prime Minister also addressed a United Nations conference on closing the gender gap, and she participated in a roundtable on education, which focused on curbing the school dropout rates in the region. She told the meeting of her government's initiatives, such as the introduction of a national mentorship program and the provision of laptops to school children.
In other news, the Land Settlement Agency this week distributed 200 certificates of comfort to applicants, some of whom have been waiting since 2000. This was the second time in the last year that certificates of comfort were handed out. Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar was on hand at the Penal Community Centre to present some of the certificates along with Housing Minister Dr. Rudal Munilal.
This certificate of comfort that you will get today provides you with protection from being arbitrarily ejected or removed off state land. It is a process towards which new beneficiaries will ultimately get a deed of lease. And you know how important a deed is. A deed you can take to a bank. You can use it as collateral to raise monies, to help educate your children, to improve your home. And so this is a very valuable process that you will be engaged in. There are instances in which some families will have to be relocated and resettled where they live in environmentally sensitive areas or where the land is required for a public purpose, such as a road. And Minister spoke about the infrastructure in these settlements where Land Settlement Agency will undertake works to upgrade your settlements there. But in doing that, there may be the need to move some of the families from a particular spot. Because when you initially went on those lands, you would have gone on those lands anyway, which way that you could have found a piece of land. And therefore, it may not have been in the most structured manner. So if we are to upgrade those communities, some families will have to move. And this doesn't mean that you're going to be ejected. This doesn't mean you're going to be bulldozed. What it means is that you will be relocated on a more appropriate spot of land. When this has to happen, we will work with you to ensure that you're resettled in a humane manner and to a better location. And according to the law, if you're asked to relocate, you will have to relocate. It is only then that if you break the law, then you could be bulldozed.
I feel so wonderful because 11 years we was waiting for it. Now I confidence that nobody will have to break us down.
More secure and no surety that they can come and break me down. And I want to thank the Prime Minister.
It's a good thing and it encourages you to, like as a young man, build up our home and now we get this. It kind of encourages him that people still hope in this part of the society.
And Minister Munilal said government is working on long-term initiatives to deal with the issue of squatting on state lands.
We have already initiated action in a number of areas. For example, the update and the attempt to correct the deficiencies in the current legislation. A draft new bill is before the ministry and will be prepared for cabinet shortly to address those problems in the legislation. The LSA has initiated collaboration and coordination with other ministries of government and other agencies, state enterprises, who are experiencing squatting and have arrived at a common agenda and direction for squatter regularization. We have employed an additional 54 temporary staff to advance the mapping and social survey sites. To date, 218 out of 251 sites have been mapped. Every structure has been taken up. Social surveys on 160 sites have been completed. We have worked with the Inter-American Development Bank in refining the action plan for regularizing 25 sites over the next 6 years. More importantly, ladies and gentlemen, the ministry has embarked on fulfilling one of its fundamental missions. That is, providing the opportunity so that many more citizens and their children would enjoy the privilege of having a roof over their heads and a solid floor upon which to stand.
Also moving a step further in the process of home ownership were 50 families who received keys to houses from the Housing Development Corporation and home improvement grants from the ministry. Some of the beneficiaries were persons who had lost their homes to fires and other disasters. Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar and Housing Minister Dr. Rudal Munilal were on hand for the distribution.
Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar told the audience that she is no stranger to persons in need, having represented them in her public life and now as Prime Minister. The Prime Minister pointed out that her government is there to make a difference, as she noted the individual cases of those in need.
I came into the political sphere many years ago with several years of experience in my own constituency of Superior. I am no stranger to problems of people in need. I know what it is like to deal with people in crisis, in poverty, and people in need of decent accommodation. And so when I came to this job, I came with some understanding of the problems at the local level. But I also came with a lot of desire to make a difference at the national level. I saw this as an opportunity to bring to the cabinet table my concerns for people who are homeless and require decent accommodation in our communities.
The Prime Minister says housing is a difficult and complex problem, but is one her government is tackling in a coordinated way with the national perspective in mind.
Homelessness and the provision of adequate housing is a national issue, and it needs to be addressed within a national framework. First are the needs of the absolute homeless. By that I mean people in immediate need, those living on the street in emergency shelters. Recently, Minister Glenn Ramadas Singh brought to our attention and to Ms. John, Minister, someone who was living in a container. It's really persons who are in absolute need, in shelters in locations not meant for human habitation. These must be our priority focus in the short term. But there are also those whom we call the relative homeless, those who are at high risk of becoming homeless. These are the people who pay too high a proportion of their income in rent, who live in inadequate accommodation, who lack necessary community supports. We need to make the problems of homeless people and persons desiring housing a national priority. But we need to find flexible solutions to meet local situations.
And there has been a significant reduction in the cost of traveling from Montrose in Chaguanas to Port of Spain and back, with the introduction of a new bus service by the Public Transport Services Corporation.
Addressing a gathering at Signature Hall, Longdonville, Works and Transport Minister Jack Warner said for far too long, citizens living within rural areas could not get transportation to and from their area, and he lamented that past government administrations had not done enough to alleviate their plight.
For far too long, the bus service did not believe that you should take care of these rural areas. And even while I was lost in Montrose this morning, I was telling Mr. Rupnarain that you have to talk to the traffic department and to the MP and to the borough, Mr. Mayor. That traffic on Montrose Main has to change.
The Works Minister lauded the PTSC board for their quick work in launching this new bus service.
If they had this kind of representation in my time, I wouldn't have had to walk 6 miles to school in the morning and 6 in the afternoon. And the $4 that you pay now for Port of Spain may have been 4 cents in those days. Who knows? I may have come out a brighter person, or no, I shouldn't say brighter, a less dull person.
Also delivering remarks was Minister of Trade and Industry Stephen Cadiz, the MP for Chaguanas East, who said that this new bus service will help commuters save money.
Right now it costs me $30 a day to get to work. And that was because she had to take a taxi from Montrose down to the junction in Chaguanas, then to get a taxi into Port of Spain, and then do the reverse in the evening, and it costs her roughly $30 a day. So when I have $4 a day now, that is a huge saving. And besides that, the saving in time, because it would take to go from one area in Port of Spain to one area in Chaguanas, then have to wait on another taxi to come up here. So she is going to save not only a substantial amount of money every month, but she is going to save an awful lot of time.
And over 300 bus drivers at the Public Transport Service Corporation now have security of tenure after many years of waiting. They were made permanent employees as the company embarked on a program of employee appreciation. PTSC bus drivers perform a very important role. For 334 of them, there is reason to celebrate.
It really feels great. Sense of accomplishment. It really feels good.
Timothy Thompson now says he has a new lease on life. He and many of his colleagues have been part-time employees of the PTSC for several years. Recently, the corporation made the decision to confirm their employment, a move which takes into consideration the mandate of the PTSC and the government to put people first.
The people partnership, government, the mantra of the Prime Minister has been serve the people, serve the people, serve the people, later augmented to deliver, to deliver, deliver. And that philosophy, those values that are embodied in the government action, really manifested itself yesterday as we delivered to these bus drivers, who we expect now to deliver quality service to the commuting public of Trinidad and Tobago in a very tangible way.
According to the chairman, some of these drivers waited for years for their employment to be regularized.
You have to appreciate that if you go to a bank for a loan, or you go to purchase something on hire purchase, you would be limited into what you can and cannot do, given the fact that you're a part-time worker at PTSC. So what we have done is allow the driver to fully realize whatever development they will require socially, economically, by confirming them in this position.
Now, with confirmation letters in hand, the future seems bright for these bus drivers.
The letter has brought some relief, some comfort, because before I went to the bank and I could not do anything without the permanent letter. They didn't want the temporary letter at all. So this permanent letter, it uplifts things. You could do certain things now.
The part-time thing means that you have to look for another job to make up that money. When we are permanent, we don't have to do that. We could concentrate, put more effort, into being the best driver that you can be.
Minister of Food Production, Land and Marine Resources Vasan Bharat says a five-pronged plan is being pursued by his ministry to reduce the food import bill and to improve this country's food security. The minister addressed the launch of a week of activities and public lectures by the Caribbean Research and Development Institute, CARDI, at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Port of Spain on Wednesday. The launch was attended by officials from several Caribbean countries and students of the Bishop's Angst High School.
According to the Food Production Minister, food security and nutrition is a major issue on the global agenda. Natural disasters such as floods, famines and drought in some of the larger food-producing countries have created shortages in supply of food to countries that rely on imports.
Many of these countries are now looking to reduce or stop the exports of foods that they traditionally have sent and exported to countries which are net importers like our own. India and Pakistan have suffered their own issues with regard to flooding and other climatic catastrophes, and they themselves have had to curtail a number of the products that they export to traditional markets of who import like ourselves.
Recent reports are that food prices internationally have increased by over 10%, pushing an additional 40 million people around the world into poverty. The minister says on the home front, a five-pronged plan is being pursued to reduce the food import bill, which is currently over $4 billion, to reduce inflation, which currently stands at 9%, having dropped from a high last year of 16%, to create a sustainable environment for long-term employment in agriculture, diversification of the economy, and creating food security for our people. He adds that research in agriculture and new technology is critical to meeting this mandate.
Without research into new techniques and new technology, we would continue to farm in the same old way that we've done when the rest of the world has moved ahead. And this is one of the reasons why we are trying to bring as many young people involved, and that's why I'm so heartened to see young students here today, because we're trying to bring as many young people in agriculture, to get involved in agriculture, because it's the young people who will embrace technology. It's the young people who will embrace new techniques. It's the young people who have and who will always be the creative ones. And therefore, it's important that we involve ourselves in this whole process of continuous research and development.
Minister Bharat made a special appeal to the audience to support local farmers by incorporating local produce in their diet.
Cabinet has approved some $16 million to expand technical and vocational training in the country for the rest of the fiscal year. This was announced by Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar as she formally opened the Workforce Assessment Center in Point Lisas on Thursday.
It is very clear that this project is going to be one of the best of its kind and the only one of its kind in the entire region. So let's congratulate them. What this does is to represent more than just the introduction of a new facility to our region. What this does is to symbolize a very critical moment in the social revolution which has been unfolding in Trinidad and Tobago during this past year. It is a movement defined by my administration's primary goal of improving the circumstances of every citizen in this country. And today's event, in my respectful view, very appropriately illustrates the great strides that our government has made in delivering on its promise of people-centered development. You may recall, some of you, in our conversations with you sometime last year, in May, that in our manifesto we made several promises. And one of those promises included what we are doing here today. And that was our promise that we will expand GATE to TechVoc education, TVET, Technical Vocational Training. And that is what this project is aimed at assisting in. Because this initiative is part of that promise to serve and expand the assistance to GATE, through GATE. There will be no charge. And I think that's the most important. It's going to be totally free for everyone to come and be assessed. Further, we have given approval at our cabinet allocating an additional sum of $16 million for the expansion of vocational programs for the rest of this fiscal year. So we are very keen. We understand that it is not just academia that will grow a nation. We understand that to grow a nation, that you have to have all kinds of skills and competencies and expertise.
And the Minister of Health, Therese Batiste Cornelis, has given an update on the measures being put in place to deal with donations of blood. The minister says there is need for blood donor facilities to be more accessible to the public, and her ministry is making progress in establishing a branch of the blood bank in San Fernando.
People have been clamoring about why is there only a blood bank in the north? What has happened to the south? Unknown to people, the Ministry of Health has been doing things in the background. And the San Fernando General Hospital has a location which can actually act as a sudden version of the blood bank. We had been approached by the Southwest Regional Health Authority into the possibility of doing that. They said they had approached the Ministry of Health Administration previously, and such had not been granted. It was discussed with the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Anton Cumberbatch, and he relayed the concerns that were there, one of the main ones being to get a hematologist to man that lab to ensure standards and efficiencies were kept in accordance with PAHO and WHO standards. The chairman informed me today that they have located a hematologist. So that is one of the things those in South can look forward to, into having now a sudden blood bank location.
2 new renal dialysis centers, the refurbishing and reopening of a 39-bed ward at the San Fernando General Hospital, and new glaucoma surgery at the Sangre Grande Hospital. These are just some of the recent developments at the various regional health authorities. RHA chairmen reported on their work at a media conference at the Ministry of Health earlier this week.
On 18th of March 2001, the first glaucoma filtration surgery using the latest Express glaucoma filtration device was successfully done on a 29-year-old male at the Sangre Grande Hospital. This surgery was the first of its kind in the English-speaking Caribbean. The other thing of note, on the 6th of April 2001, 65 Standard 4 students completed the certificate in Inspector's DEP. That is the dengue eradication program.
We are establishing 2 renal dialysis centers in Trinidad and Tobago. And these 2 centers, one will be located at the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex and the other at San Fernando General Hospital. These are to be constructed. These dialysis centers will be equipped to provide dialysis to 200 patients weekly at each center. We have entered into a contractual agreement for the design, the construction, and the operation of both dialysis centers. The contract comes into effect in June 2011, that's next month, and it's expected that the construction would take 18 months to be completed. This contractual agreement is significant because it represents hope. It will allow us at the NCRHA to double our present capacity.
We've had new equipment installation and testing, the hematology analyzer at the St. James Medical Complex, which will be able to perform blood tests on site. Another new initiative has been the Community Diabetic Eye Screening Clinic, which is at the San Juan Health Center. So this will enable us to examine diabetic patients for cataracts, glaucoma, retinopathy, etc.
Ward 15 at the San Fernando General Hospital, which was recently refurbished to accommodate the gynecology ward, was opened on April 24th, so a couple of weeks ago. The ward, which contains 39 beds, is now equipped with piped oxygen at every bed. In addition, an ultrasound room and counseling room were included in the renovations.
And as we close, a special Mother's Day greeting from the Prime Minister to the country.
Can I just say, to all the mothers, Happy Mother's Day. And to all the fathers, Happy Mother's Day. And to all the daughters, Happy Mother's Day. And all the sons. For Sunday, have a very blessed, very happy, peaceful Mother's Day on Sunday all. Thank you very much.
Pillars of Progress, an incisive look at our government at work, the programs, the accomplishments, the delivery. Pillars of Progress, coming up at 7:30 p.m. right here, just after the news.